Hey folks, Ray here, your favorite electrical mentor and event volunteer. So we just had our week one, and what we saw was a lot of people that were either using Wagos improperly to the extent that they burned, or just saying that they didn't like them. And I was hoping to put this video out so that we could clear up some misconceptions, because used properly, Wagos are very, very reliable and very, very easy to use. So first, I just want to show you several of the different types of Wagos. So the most common one, at least in FRC land, is the Wago 221, and this is going to come in a 2-wide, 3-wide, and also not shown here is a 5-wide configuration. And I don't know what the technical name for this is, but like I just call them the side-by-side, right? So as you can see, you can put one wire here and the other wire next to it, right? But they also make, and I think these are more popular, is the inline Wagos, right? So this is also a 221, but it's a 221 inline. And so here it's inline because, you know, you got one wire and another wire and they're in line with each other, right? So these are the main kinds. Now, we also have several other kinds, right? And we can talk about this more a little later, but pretty much they make another range of Wagos, and these will handle some larger wires, and then these will handle some smaller wires. So one of the biggest things that we saw at our event was these Wago 221 connectors being used incorrectly, right? And we'll get back to this in 1 second, because this is where the issue was. But let me show you how to do it properly first. So here we've just got some regular 12-gauge copper wire. As you can see, it's copper colored, so it's going to be easier to show. So I've got my Wago. This goes down to 12 gauge. I'm going to hold it upside down, and you know, I've straightened this wire, twisted it a little bit if I have to, it's fine. And then I'm going to insert it. And what you should be able to see is how the wire enters, goes past the metal plate, and you can see the copper in the middle. So I'm going to pull it out, I'm going to push it back in, and hopefully you see that the copper has entered. And then I close the lever, and I can pull this pretty hard, and it's not going anywhere, right? So now, with this Spark Max, that's bad. It's very bad. So the Spark Max also uses 12-gauge wire, but it's silicone and high strand count, so it's bulkier wire. So when I try to do this wire, sometimes it's going to be bulkier like this, and it's not going to go in cleanly. So here, right, I can't really push it in all that much, right? So it's all just kind of in the opening here, and none of it is going into or past the plate. So right now, it's barely held, and it pops right out. So that's bad. So we're gonna do better. How are we gonna do better? I'm gonna go over here. So here, I've got my red wire, going to pull on it, right? We actually don't want to twist the wire, even though we oftentimes have the habit. So we actually want to untwist the wire, and we just want to straighten it out. And the technical term for that is training the wire. So we're going to straighten it, and we're going to untwist it if we've twisted it. And now I'm going to open my Wago, hold it upside down, and like I showed you before, we're just going to make sure that all of the strands are going in. And now we're going to push, push, push. And we're just going to watch, and we can see the silver strands have gone past the plate into the middle. So if we look very closely, there they are exiting, and now they are coming back in. And now I can pull on this, and that is not going anywhere. We have tested and hung like 30 to 40 pounds of weight off of this connection, and it is fine. So what I would say is, for your robot, we want to make sure that you do not have a melted Wago or a fire or just a motor that does not perform. So I would recommend that everywhere that you already have a Wago is that you go in and you do a visual inspection to make sure that it's not clumped up in the opening, that you actually see the strands past it, and give it a firm tug to make sure that the wire doesn't come out. And if it is bad and it comes out, then redo it. Sometimes you're going to have something that's so bad that maybe it's very clumpy, or maybe it's just not good, and what you might have to do, and I'll just show it as an example, is you might have to cut the wire, I'm just going to pretend, and then strip it to the correct length, which is probably 11 millimeters, and then start again. And so the last thing I want to show you guys is, if you take the Wagos on and off a bunch of times, the wire is going to get clumpy. And so the way we do things here is, you know, when we're preparing our Spark Max, we're just gonna do it correctly, and then we're going to leave the Wago on. And yeah, I know if you've got a Neo motor on the other end, it's going to be the same kind of wire that's difficult to work with. And if you have to swap it out, you might have a couple of in and out situations, but we really want to keep it to a minimum. So like once we get these Wagos on these wires properly, we want to leave them on there for as long as possible. Now, we also have these are also Wago 221, but it's going to be -612, right? So the difference with these, and I think you'll be able to see, like, this is a gray lever instead of the orange lever. The actual difference is that these are physically larger, so they only come in the side-by-side variant. So you should be able to see that these are a different size. And so these guys, the bigger ones, will go down to a 10 gauge wire. And there's a couple of different ways that matters here. So the first one is if you've got this clumpy wire that we were showing before and you just can't cut it and to redo it and you can't straighten it out to get it to go into the regular Wagos, we can use the bigger ones. Now again, we have the ones that are the gray levers. I think this is just the variation that's for like extreme environment and whatnot. So maybe like our purchasing team just made that mistake and they bought these instead of the regular ones, but you can get these for a cheaper price in like the regular orange style. Or maybe this is a happy mistake and the fact that these are gray help us differentiate these from the other ones. So entirely up to you. But again, I can open this and this clumpy wire that would not go into the regular 12 gauge Wago is going to go really easily into the 10 gauge Wago, right? Remember, 12 gauge wire, 10 gauge capable Wago, and that just goes right in. And I slam that and that's not going anywhere. Now the other thing is, if you're using a Kraken motor or one of the other motors, these that come with 10 gauge silicone wire, it's going to be the exact same problem that I was talking about with how these Spark Maxes have the high strand count 12 gauge wire, except down for 10 gauge wire. So it's going to be the same thing where you're using your 10 gauge capable Wago, but now you're using it on 10 gauge high strand count wire, so it's the same thing, is that you're going to have to straighten the wire, make sure it's all clean, and then insert it into this. So these are the possibilities that you can use when you're wiring your robot.